Share my camera. There we go. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're coming from. We appreciate everyone showing up here. It's a low turnout today for what we usually get, but that's okay. That means we just get a more personal, in-depth experience. So I'm Brian. This is Desiree. I'm not sure if Melissa will join us or not. It is. She is actually in Australia, so I believe it would be 5 a.m. her time or maybe 6 tomorrow.
If she joins, then you can kick me out.
So wasn't sure if she was going to join, so Desiree stepped up and volunteered to be here just in case. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're coming from. I do see a couple new names on here. So for those who have not been here before, this is Revit Radio, where we have no show if you don't ask questions. So it's kind of one of those things where if you ask questions, great, we'll answer them. If not, you get to hear Desiree and I talk. And we're a married couple, so we have nothing to say to each other after 15 years. So it's going to be a whole lot of silence. Yeah, that's so not true for anybody who knows us. So if you do have a question, please put it in the question and answer pod. If you do just want to say hello, give us crap, do whatever you want. As you can see, people are already doing. Please feel free to put that in the webinar chat, or even if you want to respond to something we've said. Cool. Let's go ahead and put those responses in chat as well, so we can kind of keep up what's going on there. So with that said, this is recording. I will add this to my YouTube channel. I don't remember if I added last month's or not. So hopefully if it's there, cool. If not, then I'll realize it when I go to add this one. So a couple things
They
going on
took
there. I
your
always like
threat.
to, what was that?
They took your threat seriously. There's already two questions. It's like a
Already two questions. This is gonna be great. So I always like to start off with something small. And a couple of things came up in the last month. One that came up, and this came up with a client actually just last week. I don't think a lot of people know about this. They have a client and they were doing like these presentation, drawings, and they were putting colored elevations like this on the sheet. They weren't in realistic. Ironically, this client was still in 2022, so she didn't even turn like the textures on or anything like this. But regardless of if you have textures on, consistent colors, hidden line, whatever, I think things that often people forget on the presentation views are in your graphic displays. You can add a background if you want to. So you can have the background, and by default, when people turn background on, this gradient comes up, which is
no
okay
screen.
sometimes. What was that?
All we see is your face.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, hey, share my screen. See, damn it. I remembered the recording. I forgot to share the screen. Dang it. Thought I was doing so well on the recording too. Um, So when you're in a presentation view or any view, you can go into your graphic display options and you can come back here and change the background. So you do have options for background. You can say you want it to be gradient. You can say just turn a sky on, which is so freaking dark. It's like, what sky is that dark blue? I don't know, but that is an option you have there. Or you can always go in, and this is the one I want to show people, is you can start going in and putting some sort of image in. So you can grab an image, you can go browse an image, and you can put it in there. But this sometimes just helps a little bit to go in and add that when you're trying to do some sort of presentation view. Personally, for me, on like a customized image, if I want just like a color, like a light blue in there or something, I just grab an image that's literally light blue. So kind of one of those things that I just wanted to bring out that you have to work on there. The other thing I did want to talk about, I'm just going to undo that because I can't deal with that dark blue. The other thing, this actually came up. Desiree and I have a discussion because, as you know, she's got a new job and she's going through setting up Revit standards yet again for a client. And this is one of those things that I want to talk about that a lot of people, depending on how you set it up, but not necessarily just in your type of workflow, but having different views or tags or view types or things like that for your working views or even for your views. So the client I was working with last week, she's a design build architect, and so she's working with a lot of the contractors. And what I was starting to show her is, if you're a contractor working in Revit, we've got our typical dimension string, right, where we all come through and we select our dimension string, and we've got this set up. But I don't think what a lot of people know is, if I wanted to have my default like version that we're used to seeing, one after another, I'm going to copy this to the clipboard, paste the line to current same place, and then I'm going to take that one and drag it in your dimension styles. And this is something I'm not saying you have to do if you don't want to, but there are other ways to be able to come on here. So right now the default is continuous, but by that same dimension string, you can set up a baseline dimension if you wanted to, or you could go in and have that be an ordinate dimension. Again, not saying this is something that you might want to be doing to submit to buildings for permits or whatever. But if you're a design build firm or a contracting firm, this might be a little bit easier for your guys to deal with, because I know when I used to be in the world framing, I'd hook my tape measure on the edge and just start going across and doing the numbers. So, I was going, okay, this is 20 and then this is 70, and I was doing that math in my head. But again, we can come through and just start setting up different styles or different types of things for those people on the field. Maybe it's a whole set, another set of drawings. The other thing I like to talk about too is even like for your own working views, is having a whole bunch of things set up in your own working views. So if I were to come in here and look at this, I don't think I really need a leader on this. I've got this door tag here. Looks like my standard door tag, but if I zoom in, I have other versions inside of here. I've got the fire rating, I've got the code width, I've got the actual width, I've got all these different things inside of here. So you can start building your tags, etc., based off of data that you want to be looking for. And good morning, Melissa.
Hey.
Told everybody you might be like, nah, 5 a.m. is too damn early for me. Screw y'all. So just kind of one of those tools for me that, think about different scenarios that you're looking for and what you want to come in and start doing. I know that's not the button I wanted. I know Desiree had a discussion and I liked it so much I already added it to mine. Adding the view name to all of the working sections, because that way if people don't name them, it's really, really apparent on your working views in the plan. Hey, look, I just calling this section 3, or if somebody forgot to name it, it also helps you with all of those working views to be able to go back into um, the project browser and find what it is, or start yelling at people to go create those.
Yeah, take credit for that one. That 100% came from one of my teammates.
So just kind of one of those things of, think about, you don't have to go with all your typical stuff. Think about having more of these working tags, working dimension strings, whatever it might be, that can help you or the guys on the field or whatever else you might be looking for on that. I always say the same thing about like view templates. I've got working view templates to go put the view in wireframe, leave walls and room separation lines on, so I can just literally see only those two things. And now I can start seeing where my room separation lines overlap with walls when I get all those Revit warnings. So I even have a whole bunch of view templates to go through and start working in that way too. So, all right, that's all I had to cover. Is anything come up that you can be thinking of, or any questions we got going on there?
You've got quite a few in there. Melissa, you want to take over since I was just covering, just in case you decided to actually sleep?
I tried. I actually don't see any questions except for Scott's.
I'll do the first 4. They might have come in before you hopped on.
Sorry. Zoom, of course, had to update, and apparently, the internet's slow when it's upside down.
Nice. All right. Tom asks, this is a good one. Global parameters, other than locating doors and rotation of north arrows and maybe materials, what other examples of global parameters do you have? There you go. There's your whole hour.
There's my whole hour. Yeah. So I've done several presentations on global parameters. Ironically, one of my presentations, this tip came up, not because somebody said it, but because it popped into my brain. And the person who asked me a question that got me onto this, he was Sash. He's based out of Portland. He asked a question, and him and I just looked at each other like this light bulb went up in our head on this. But the one that I have in my template, and I think it's in my template, I think I've added it to my template under global parameters, is here's the one I have right here. And I call this my turn off for plot. Now, for years, everybody's been asking, well, is there like a no plot layer like we had in AutoCAD? And there is no such thing as a no plot layer, right? We may have the invisible lines. We may be able to go through and look at our invisible lines, etc. But almost every firm has some sort of title block with some sort of guidelines inside of it. I also have detail boxes that I use that have guidelines for people to see what's going on with this. I've even created an annotation family that is my symbol. Let me see if I can find it. Sample hyperlink that I put down here so people can, oops, I don't need more than one of those. So people can come in here and place it, and then they can put text values, right? This is my text value. This is my additional note, which is multi-line text, so people can do this, etc. And then I could possibly even add a hyperlink, right? So I've got all this stuff inside of here. Well, behind the scenes, all of those things have visibility toggles like almost everybody has. I've linked those visibility toggles to my parameter called turn off or plot. So if I go into my global parameters before I print, I can untick this. And on a real project, unticking that, it can take 4 or 5 minutes, right? It's going to be like, oh, you've got 600 sheets in your project and 5,000 details, and use this sample hyperlink thing. But you'll notice it's all gone. It's just disappeared. They're there. Now I can go hit print. I could go back to my global parameter or hit undo, and I can bring all of that stuff back. So this was one that I was doing a presentation on global parameters, and somebody asked me a question, and this clicked into my head saying, wow, this becomes huge. We can start linking things like this to those global parameters when we get into it. I got to open up another file. So the other thing that I like to talk about on global parameters too, and this is kind of one that I think it's more not standard practice, because we can link global parameters to a whole bunch of things. But one of the things that I've tried doing it to, I'm looking for my Revit family project, is you can start using global parameters to 3D modeled stuff. And in this example, and I have a client who does this on all of their projects, in my floor plan, I have a slab, or in my floor plan, I have a slab. And if I come in here and edit this, I want the floor, not all the structural framing. If I go ahead and edit this boundary, in this boundary, I did a dimension from the grid line to the edge of my slab. So it's a sketch line. It's not picked walls, nothing is set there. I just drew a sketch line. And then inside my sketch mode, I did a dimension between the grid line and the slab edge. This could be face of wall, whatever you're doing for this. And I called it slab edge. So I did that dimension, I selected it, I associated it to a project parameter, and I called it slab edge. So now in my project, if I'm like, oh man, that slab edge detail is not 6 3/8 of an inch, I need to go to that global parameter and change that slab edge value to be something different, like, foot. It's going to adjust my floor accordingly. But what's cool about that is if I go into my 2D detail, I think it's this one. In my 2D detail, I have drawn the detail item in one of these 2D details. I don't remember which one I did it in. I think it was this one. Maybe it was this one. I think it was this one. So in this one, you can see I now have a slab edge. It looks like I broke it and did something wrong to it, but I should have dimensioned that not from the edge of the plywood, but to here. And so now when I go through and change that global parameter, it's not only going to be updating the 3D model, it's, oh, I actually did it to the rim joist, because the rim joist is so going to move independent of the floor itself. But so I maybe have dimensioned it to the rim joist, maybe to this detail component, which is the plywood, whatever. But you can start linking those global parameters not only to the 3D model elements, but using those same dimensions, linking it to the dimensional side of things as well. So yeah, there's a ton of different options for that as well.
You're gonna have to talk faster. You have a ton of questions.
I have a ton of questions coming. Okay, I got one more to do on this one. I just got to find conference.
So that's all we need is Mackie talking faster.
Global. The other one that I came up with, and this was a conference. Come on, I'm in my search in Windows 11 global. So one of the things that came up is global parameters is design options. Does anybody remember what presentation I did that one on?
RTC or built 2022. Do you find that in larger user environments, folks have a harder time tracking those sorts of uses on global parameters? Follow-up question.
Yeah, so definitely on that. And it's one of those things that when you definitely start looking at this, the team needs to understand. So I had a client who they went in and somebody went in and deleted the floor, which probably had 35, 40 sketch or global parameters assigned to dimensions, and they deleted the floor. All of those global parameters were lost. So the other one that I talked about, and I can't find my handout on this, I was going to try to open up my theory on here, but I had done one called global parameters for design options, right? And so one of the things that we start talking about and we start looking at inside of this is, okay, so let's say we had a window or some sort of object. And I wish I could find the file that I have for that. I just don't know where it is. But let's say like design options, if I wanted to change the size of a window, the size of that window is going to be go from a 3 foot to a 4 foot tall window, or 4 foot to 6 foot, or whatever. Maybe um, that's going to line up with mullions or something else like that. The one thing that I started doing is realizing that why are we trying to use design options for this? We can actually start doing global parameters for this. So if I were to, and I'm just going to use a door as a terrible, I'll come back up over here. I'm going to use a door as a terrible example. So let's say this door, right? In my sample for this, and I'll see if I can find it. I duplicate this and just call this my 3.0 by global parameter, right? And so what I can do on this is take the height of this window, and rather than have the height of this window be fixed, associate this to a global parameter, right? We're just going to call this one my test. So I've got this test global parameter now, right? So I've now got this dimension set up to a global parameter height. Well, I also want to come in here and put a reveal in, right? So maybe I want to come in, or maybe it's going to be curtain wall mullions, anything like that that you can start thinking of. So I'm going to go to architecture tab. I'm going to go to wall. I'm going to go to reveal. I'm going to put a reveal in here. I'm going to say done. Cool. Now, when I select this reveal, I'm going to go ahead and I want to make this permanent, but I'm in 3D. So let me go to an elevation view. Oops, wrong project. Let me go into an elevation. I was just working with, that's details. I don't have a north elevation. Cool. Fine, let's do a section. Look at this here. Flip it. Change it. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension to that reveal. Right, it's probably dimensioning to a level, but you'll get the point here. And what's going to dimension here? I can take that same
Tom just
dimension
post a
now.
link to your blog in the chat.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Yeah, there we go. There's
Yeah,
one of my blog too. Well,
there
what's
you go.
great
That's all
about
you
this
need.
is so now I've got this global parameter, right? And if we were trying to move a reveal and adjust the door, we would have to copy this whole wall along with the reveal, along with the door, into a different design option. And then that wall wants to move out 6 feet, something like that. I've got to go move that wall as well. But the beauty of this is now that that's a global parameter, I can come in here and say, oh, okay, cool. Let's just go to my global parameters and let's take that test parameter and say, ooh, that should have been at 8 feet. And since I've set this up, I've now changed not only the height of the door, okay, it moved the wall. Like I said, that reveal should have went to the level, not to the bottom of the wall. That was cool. Wasn't expecting that. But I can start setting this up to make those reveals move, make the curtain wall grid lines move, anything that you're talking like that as well. So, and the reason why I did this is I had a client, they were doing this giant convention center. And that was one of the options, like, oh, well, we want to change this, the doors maybe to be from 8 feet to 10 feet or whatever it did, whatever it wasn't. We want to make, then if we do that, the louver heights have to change, the door heights have to change. And there's this whole strew of things that we're going to go through. And I'm like, I really don't want to have to copy the entire exterior of the building to do this. So I also then, we went in and because you don't know now, am I on option A or option B? We actually created 3D model text that we would put in the view. And therefore, when we printed a view, we'd have it say option A or option B. And we also got crazy with formulas. So in those global parameters, we said like, oh, gee, let me go create a new one here. And we'll just call this option A. We made it a yes, no parameter. Cool. And basically we said, okay, if option A, then 7, else 9, right? So we created a little toggle that basically when you toggled this, boom, all of those different things would start to move. So in their project, they toggled option A. And when they did that, boom, this all went to there. Downside to this is you have to toggle it, print, toggle it again, print again for your option A and option B. And rather than even setting up two separate sheets, like I said, we created model text in here or symbols. We did both. And then we basically said, if it says option A, the text will be option A. If it says option B, the text will be option B. So we were able to then, when you were printing, you knew which option you were printing based on what was toggled. So yeah, global parameters are much more than just what you see out of the box, people associating them to, like materials or a few other things. You can take this pretty far. And when I taught one of my global sessions at AU, one of the track home builders came up to me and said, this is intriguing. They've been doing this with other ways, but they're going, man, this could really start taking into consideration a lot more of what we could do for, oh, if you toggle option A, that means the garage gets 6 feet longer. So we could move the grid line, we could move the walls. If roofs are picked with the pick walls tool, the roof's going to go along for the right, etc. So in some of their different options for these homes, they were like, cool, if we say go from option A to option B, the windows get bigger or something like that. Fortunately, we can't use it for family types or anything, so you'd still have to swap out the family types. But in their early preliminary designs, it was a beautiful tool for them to start going through and setting up. So hopefully that answers that, along with Tom for clicking a link to my blog on global parameters. And I don't even know if that one got into, I'll click the link because I can't even remember. I don't remember if that one gets into design options as well. Yeah, see, look at that.
Another one?
Yeah, so here we go. So you can see I kind of got in there option A, option B for the global parameter button. And this literally came from working with my client. Oh, we needed to move this up or down, or if there was option B, there was only two, so we toggled it off, etc. So we got really far into the, hey, what's going on here and what's not. And since you can't toggle off reveals, we actually just use the offset from all. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with global parameters. Again, as the follow-up question was, you just need to make sure the entire team knows, hey, we're going crazy on the global options on this one.
I'll just go in order so I can catch up with the ones that came in to begin with. Oh my goodness, you've got like 5 hours of content here. Using railing supports as balusters. Thoughts? Question mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
this is something that I came railing, sample railing. This is something that I talked about very early on. I don't remember when we got the railing supports a long time ago. And I know Tom on here had tweeted out a question to the group like, hey, how do you do spiral barbed wire fences? And this was because of Tom. I had already had a barbed wire fence family here, but then you start looking at, let me rotate so you can see it. So I had normal barbed wire, and then Tom's like, gee, how can we do this? And this is one of those things that if I tab select, you can see that this is a railing support. So one of the nice things about railing supports is you can say, hey, keep repeating this. And it's not like a baluster. You can start coming through and doing better shapes than you can do with balusters, and you can have more control over them. The other reason why I really, really, really love supports in lieu of balusters is we've all probably come in and created some sort of glass type handrail like this. But when you get into there, you're like, cool, but I have a weird size in the corner, or I have this going on there, or I need to align this with something else. If I grab a support, I can always unpin it and move it wherever I want it to go, right? So we can move those out, or I can unpin it and change it to be a different clip, right? So that's how I got the one over here. This one's still, the default supports are all the 4 clip, but at the first one, I had to tab select to get to it, ungrab it, and change it to be the 2 clips on the right side or the 2 clips on the left side, etc. So yes, you can go through and start to set those all up. Even on just a typical standard handrail, oh, this is really, really cool, but I want to be able to grab this support and this baluster and move it. Cool. That's not a baluster. This is simply a support. So now I can put those wherever the heck I wanted to put those and start moving it and doing what I want to do with it. Even to the fact, like up here, this little gate you see, this is my first support. So this handrail is not using balusters but supports, and I just went ahead and selected the very first support and swapped it out to be a rectangular support with a gate. Now, granted, I got to have 34-inch, 36-inch, whatever the different sizes you're going to need, but I have the capability to do that. So yeah, I am a big proponent of balusters as supports all over the place. I don't do it everywhere, but I do it in a lot of locations.
Okay. Is there a good way to disallow join for multiple beams?
I don't know if there is.
I was trying to think of an answer for this.
Because it's not like, oh no, I'll just go back to.
I feel like the opposite is often true. Like you want them to stay connected and then they don't. Like you hit tab for like select chain of beams or lines or whatever, and suddenly you only get 3 instead of a whole.
Well, I was trying to think, if I go to beam, there's no like disallow join like we get when we're drawing walls.
Right.
It's just, it is what it is. Cool.
Select every other one and move them all up and break it. and then move them back down, but they'd grab each other again.
Well, and even if you did select all instances, you can't.
You'd have to do like every other to break them.
Well, yeah, and the only way to disallow join on those isn't it to right click on the grip and say disallow join?
Yeah.
So it's not like you can even do that on without using some sort of add-in utility. I don't think there's a way to globally or quickly do disallow join on structural framing.
Can you disallow the join as you're drawing on like walls or no?
No,
Yeah, I can't.
because there's no disallow join button here.
Right. We got nothing for you on this one.
If you disallow and then copy it around, is that at least
Oh,
somewhat
there you go.
better?
Oh, yeah, I think that's true, Melissa.
Until you have to stretch it and it tries to
Yeah.
grab again, or is it going to remember disallow?
No, it's disallowed here and here. So let's do another beam.
The perpendicular beam, yeah. And then copy it down and see if it tries to grab it. Like
No, still
copy it over
disallowed.
such that you have to stretch it.
Still
Yep.
disallowed.
Okay. Huh,
Even if I did, so there you go. See, Melissa's got a good answer,
there you go.
and she's half
Everything
asleep.
is disallowed. Hey, it's cool. Daylight savings was Sunday, so it's 6:30. It's totally fine.
Oh, that's right. You guys in the middle of daylight savings there, which we're not on for another 3
Yeah,
weeks.
only for a couple of weeks and then back to. Yeah, I'm gonna be all messed up. Australia goes first, and then Ireland goes before us too. So all my countries are gonna be all messed up.
People
I can't keep track of what time it is anywhere.
Yeah, no.
Okay, last one I think before Melissa has them. How do you recommend to clean family subcategories on the project? We're trying to swap some of them that have typos, for example, glass with 1S versus glass with 2 S's, or other ways to get rid of unnecessary categories.
First off, why are your categories of material specific? I have problems with that. But barring that aside, because you can put it on the glass subcategory but call it metal, and then it's just confusing. But anyway, I say that with doors too, because right, the out of the box door categories, that's what we have. Personally, for me, there's a lot of different tools out there. I use Ideate for all of this, and this is probably for me. And I know this is an add-in tool, and I don't usually, plug these at Revit Radio. But with Ideate, they've got Style Manager. You can do something similar things with Guardian. Will let you do it. But when I go in here to Style Manager, I can start seeing all of the object styles in a project. If I were to analyze that, it will then start telling me all the families that have that that are using that object style. I don't think using native in Revit trying to do all of this is going to be easy. Now, you could use scripts, which I do have, and by scripts I mean journal files in Revit. So I have, if I go into my Revit families, if I go into my scripts, I have a lot of different journal files that will set this up. So if I came in here to like reference plane subcategories and I go ahead and edit this with Notepad++, you're going to see that inside of here. No, not right now. I'm coming down here and trying to say, hey, let's go create this new category and not a reference. So I've come through here and said, hey, I can go in and create new categories. I could even go through and rename categories. So when I get certain clients, they're going to be like, oh, I wanted to rename your category from this to that, etc. I'm trying to see if I have any of those in here. I don't think I do. I think I have those in the specific client names. Oh no, here, this one might actually have an object style rename. So like inside of here, I had one client come in and say, oh, okay, I want to rename whatever it was, object styles, Revit rename. Trying to figure out what is, oh, so they didn't want it to be SOGBJ1, they wanted it to be just 0, right? So I was able to go through and rename these. The downside of running a Revit journal file, if you're like, say, hey, go rename this object style, and it doesn't exist, then it just fails on the journal, right? So it doesn't, sorry, OBG2 to OGBJ1. So it's just not going to succeed. So you can run it. You can say, run it on these 30 families, and it'll just fail. Once it fails, it'll fail. And then you say, oh, that family didn't have this. We're okay. So you absolutely can do journal files to do this. And I have taught this at AU, so I do know it's there at AU as well. If you want to download the presentation, but you can use a journal file for that. But again, a journal file will fail if it doesn't meet the criteria. So I'm sure there are other add utilities. I know Guardian has one. I'm sure you could probably do it with Dynamo, all these different things, but you manually trying to go through and do that becomes a pain. this is also, like I said, like I will load all those families into a project, and then I'll use my ideate tools, and I can say, oh, look, I was trying to get rid of parking stripe. Which family is using that? Then it'll come in here and say, oh, it's this family that's using that stupid thing, right? So you can go through here, and at least this tool will let me know which ones are broken. And not only just for the object styles, like, oh, do I still have these stupid line styles in there, or these filled regions? I misspelled spelt a filled region way back in the day, and all my clients have misspelt. Thankfully it wasn't like Desiree and she misspelled CMU walls, reversing the U and the M.
Can't
But
believe you remember that.
I can.
but it'll go through it and start letting you say, oh, these are the families that are still wrong. So you can go and edit those families to change it. This isn't going to edit those families to change it, but at least it'll give you a list of the families that you know you need to now go change. Inside of a project, you can just be like, yeah, sure, I don't want parking stripe in there at all. And I can delete that. And if I delete it, then this family is now just going to be using the parent category for that family. So it's going to use the parking category, not subcategory of parking space or
I will
parking stripe.
100% be stealing your computer when I'm done with my template for this. Yeah, it's already a disaster.
So just kind of one of those things for me when you start looking at it, yep. That's what I go through and start getting into. So hopefully that answers the question. Natively, not an easy way to do it. I'd be using some sort of adding utility. And even if you've got to buy that adding utility for a year, it's probably going to save you the money that it would take you to manually go through and fix all that crap.
Ideate's getting some love in the chat. Too bad we don't have anybody on the call, I don't think, from Ideate. Like,
well, and I think Guardian will do the same thing, and Guardian might even, and I'm not 100% positive, but I think Guardian will even then say, oh, these are the families that need fixed, and I think there might even be a way to tell Guardian to go back and fix those families, but I could be incorrect in that.
okay. All right, all yours, Melissa. Michael says CTC also.
Yeah, CTC I know has one.
Oh, Ideate's cheaper than Guardian. I always assumed Ideate was kind of on the spendy side.
It's a bit on the spendy side. I mean, but I don't know. There's just tools like that where I see people who manually try to go in and do that. And don't get me wrong, I'm a consultant who gets paid hourly. I still will grab a damn tool to do that because it's just no one wants to go through that tedious process of all that crap. No, give me a tool that I'll buy a tool that'll make my life easier.
So Style Manager is faster than CTC Type Swapper, Jason says in the chat. So it looks like there's a few tools out there. It's just preference or what you have access to.
Yeah, and I don't think for CTC, do I have them installed on here? I don't think.
The way I've done it in the past is you get a summer intern and then you abuse them for 3 months and they never come back.
So you've saved them.
I saved them from Revit careers.
You saved them from this industry.
Yep. Loving the chatter. You guys are feisty today.
You mean yesterday?
You mean yesterday? You guys are feisty yesterday.
We're feisty yesterday.
Okay.
All right. What's our next one?
Well, next one we have. Oh, did you?
No, I was just saying. Go ahead. I think you have them all now.
I think so. You can go hurry and spell check everything that you've ever written. That's so nice of Brian. All right. So since you were talking about journal files, Sarah was asking, they recently decided to make a section tail flag for details a little smaller. The template setting is easy, but we have active projects that we would like to fix these in. Is there a way to automate or batch that? So they just want to change the detail call out, not the building or wall sections.
If you did transfer project standards, would that work?
I don't think it actually carries all the way through last time I tried that because it seems like it should.
Let's go to 23. Because I know I have 2 projects open here. Let's go to manage, transfer project standards, check none.
I think you're going to get all of them. And even then you're opening all the projects, right? And doing it all at once.
Right.
Yeah, but
When
it's better than
if I
manually
remember
going
right,
through.
it doesn't actually set something, but maybe that's fixed now because I gave up in like 20.
Well, I'm not even seeing like section tag types. It's going to transfer those. So as long as you didn't rename it, I
Yeah.
think it would swap the section tags out. Let's see.
You know,
Okay.
try it because I remember thinking it should work, and then it just it didn't follow
Overwrite.
all the steps.
Oh, so yeah, it would
See.
overwrite just the detail ones.
Well, brought this one across and gave me the number.
It seems a little blind though. Like I know it'd be more labor intensive, but to load it in and swap out the definition for just the details, I guess it didn't. Where's that summer intern?
Summer intern. Well, the one thing that even if you renamed the family, the one thing that I always try to show people is if you right click in the project browser on a
Yeah,
family, you can say reload. So
yeah,
even if you came across and said, hey, we renamed this to be, it used to be called section head working, and now we call it section head working with detail. Don't go load that family in and swap that crap out. Come over here in the project browser and say reload. Because when you come in here and say reload, then it's basically just going to swap out X for Y. And as long as you have the same types in there, if they're not the same types, it'll just add the new ones to it. But at least it's in the same family. So all you've got to do then is swap it out. So
yeah.
for
Sarah
me,
says
it's
loading the
it's
family is easy. It's setting it in the tag definitions. I think what Brian's trying to say is that if it's named the same, it'll swap. And if you have your detail tail different than your section tail, if you reload the family with the two types.
right. But
Yeah.
even with that said, so if I renamed it, yeah. So this one was just called section head working, and I added this to it. There wasn't any other properties. It updated in here automatically. So yes, going
Also,
into the manage additional settings,
No.
annotations, section tags. Yeah, come on, annotations. Okay. Section tags.
Zoom helps.
If you've changed the detail it's using, yes, you've got to go through and do that. But if you're just swapping the family out and it was using the same exact name, it should just do it once you reload the family.
So my guess is if they just changed just the section ones, they probably were like all using the same
Yeah,
tail or head. Would
yeah.
that be correct, Sarah? Because I feel like that's the issue I ran into as well.
And you
If you
could
Unless
create
they
a
were
new
already
one,
called something different and it was already using a separate one, that would be easier than.
yeah. But what it makes it sound is like she said we created one for details. It makes to me like it sounds like it was a new one. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah. But once
Yeah,
you've
that's what I'm
you
thinking.
loaded in
Yep.
here,
yeah,
so it'll work. But now you're still gonna have to go in and say, oh, I want to grab all the ones that are details and swap them out. Now that's not going to be horrible because you're literally going to grab one of them, come up here to the edit type, and change it out to use the appropriate head. So yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a, or excuse me, not the appropriate head. You're gonna have to come in here because you've loaded it in, just swap it out to be the right type. So you'll
right.
have to swap that out to be the right type of view. But yeah, for that, I don't, you've loaded it in there, but you're still gonna have to choose which sections, which ones were details versus this, etc.
You're still opening every project. Could you run a journal file for those
Well, you
steps?
can't, but you don't know which sections you're grabbing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you're grabbing view types more than likely and just saying, hey, swap this view type out. If they were already their own view type, then sure, edit type, and you're going to bring this in here. And if that's the case, I would think you could just right click and say copy, can't copy views. What am I thinking here? Because the drafting view, you could copy the drafting view type, it would bring it across along with the section head. But if it's a live view, then it's not going to. So yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah, summer intern it is.
We're just trying to make America great again by hiring a whole bunch of interns to do
Making
manual.
sure everybody gets interns.
Sorry, I've been watching too many political ads lately.
But you made me think I'm actually going to open my template right now and make sure I have those things named separately in case I want to change them.
Good idea.
Wow, my gate family broke. Gotta go look at my gate family.
Okay. All right, what else we got?
Well, there is actually one that is 2022 specific, so maybe you should start opening that so we can test and see if it works for you.
Beautiful.
And in the meantime, I apologize to Sarah. Sorry, there's no easy button for that. It seems like there should be, and yet no.
I have a
Oh,
different one for my working sections, but my printing sections and my details are the same. Dang it, Sarah, now I have to change them.
let's see. Well, that's opening. John is saying, huge fan of your link detail strategy. Any new updates since the AU 2013 presentation?
Look at that. And
So a decade on.
I think I already have it. Yep. It's changed over the years, and I don't remember which one was which. Yeah, this is my details one. Couple of things that I know I've changed probably since the last time I presented this at AU. Am I in the details file? That's not the details file. I just got to figure out which file. No, that's the handrails file. The pink is the details file. So probably only a couple things that I've really changed. One, I did talk about, possibly like linking global parameters to this stuff as well. But one of the other things when we start looking at this, getting into it, is I started taking the use of filters more into play when I start looking at things. So still talk about all of the, hey, everything's going to be intelligent, etc. But one of the things for me, like if I were to come in here and grab like this concrete, I'm gonna go back to fat lines too. This will be a little bit more impressive in fat lines. And if I were to come into the comments and type something in like beyond or existing, you'll see that the second I type in that word beyond, I'm going to get beyond because my tag's looking at that comments. But I also then have filters coming in to start displaying what's going on here. So this is probably a worse one to get to. But so like for this view here, I've got these bricks here. I didn't want to have to go through into these bricks and what I used to do, right click, override graphics and view, hide this, change the line weights to be gray. And I was going through and doing that. But once they gave us filters, the detail items, I'm kind of like, cool. Now I can just add the word beyond to it and it'll start coming into play. Or if I were to, let me say select host, if I were to come into this brick here and change it from beyond to like existing, I have a filter for existing where it leaves the hatch pattern, but then just changes it to be gray. So I've added a lot of filters to start going in and controlling some of those things that I'm looking for. Same thing for like my structural engineers. I have filters for 3D rebar as well as 2D rebars that if I were to change this from a number 5 to a number 6 or something like that, once I do that, the color changes. So my 3D rebar as well as my 2D rebar is now all color coded based off of size. And I'm not creating different families for that. I'm actually using filters. And I stole this from one of my Canadian clients way back when, that they wanted the different sizes to be different colors, but we didn't have filters back then. So literally I, in the family, created 35 extrusion or filled regions, all of different colors, the exact same thing over and over and over. So the number 6 could be purple and the number 7, the M10 could be whatever, going through and setting that. So I've really taken into consideration filters. And I can't remember if 2013 we could actually do schedules, but I also now use schedules for all of my detail components. Not only just to kind of see what's going on in the project, but to start spell checking, right? Because I might have spelled some of the comments or the suffixes wrong. So being able to come in here and really start saying, oh, what am I having inside of here? What's going to go inside of here? Exporting this out to Excel, doing a spell check in Excel, making sure it's all correct. I've done that stuff as well. And even more and more and more, and I don't think this is in 23.1, I can't remember. Was it a 23.1? It was. You can now say filter by sheet. So I can literally on a detail page now filter out all of these things and have it in there with all the comments, etc. So I can have a schedule on my drafting view, on my detail sheet of all the different components I've used in that sheet and in that sheet only. So it's not necessarily going to be giving me all 5,000 detail components I'm using. Hey, in this view, these are the details you've used. Did I actually check that or did I say cancel? Filter. I'm gonna check that. Filter by
I'm looking
sheet.
forward to that.
Say, okay, I'm gonna go to a sheet. Do I actually have any of these on a sheet? Ooh, I do. So now I've got this one thing on a sheet and I can ding that one schedule down here, place it onto the sheet, and those are all of the detail components I've used in this one object. It really starts making you understand, wow, I've used a crap ton of detail components inside of here to start seeing what's going on. So kind of a nice feature. It's not listing everything, but it is listing the things that are in this view. And theoretically, if I delete that view, you're going to see all of those go away.
There's a follow-up question down at the bottom of, are you finding that people are starting to use color in their plans?
I am. I mean, especially now since 90% of the people are looking at PDF anyway. I know we still got to submit for a lot of jurisdictions, documents, but we can usually submit those via PDF. They don't have to be printed. Some are printed, but most of my clients are starting to do things in color for the intelligence of color, not just for color's sake, right? We're not back to the AutoCAD days where blue meant wide lines, green meant this, etc. We're getting more and more and more into the concept of, hey, let's go back into really doing colors for intelligence sake. So like even in my templates, is that what I wanted? Yep. Most of my clients now are getting it. Let me go turn this phase to a different phase. Where's my phase? I'm blind right now. I need to see up my walls. Why am I not seeing phase in here? Down here, because I didn't scroll far enough. So a lot of my clients now and a lot of their code plans are color coding rated walls based off of, hey, this lets me know the fire rating, but is it a smoke barrier, smoke partition, fire barrier, what is going on? They're getting into more and more, hey, all of our code plans are done in color. And it even says print this sheet in color in their title blocks. So title blocks are saying this sheet to be printed in color, this sheet to be printed in color. And most print companies, most facilities now, color is not that much of a cost difference between black and white like it used to be 15, 20 years ago.
Michael
Yeah.
adds that he's making sure that even if we print in color, that it makes sure that it shows up in black and white as well.
Yeah, it shows up with a nice grayscale as opposed to just being all color or all whatever.
What's your plan for your unanswered questions?
What unanswered question?
You have about 7 left.
We're good. Keep going.
Okay.
I just need to start talking faster.
All right, how about Pal? Let's see. Is there a way to avoid pressing the fix group button, or sometimes is it inevitable? I have a particular level situation when trying to change levels distance. It keeps showing up. I think the answer is
Groups.
you have to avoid groups if you don't want to ever have to fix groups.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the big thing on groups are understanding the nuances of them. Like, when you make walls are always unconnected. You never have them go from level 1 to level 2. They're level 1 to level 1 with a 10-foot offset. I don't even make them unconnected personally. I make them go from the level to the level unconnected. Melissa, I don't know what you guys do. I know you use a lot more groups than I do. Not using any line-based families. I don't care if you're in a detail group or a 3D group, line-based families, blow it up. Never including handrails or stairs in groups because those will blow up as well. But it's more understanding a lot of the nuances of groups to try to minimize that. Are you ever going to get the capability to not say fixed groups? No, it's going to come up. You have to understand that it's going to come up and have to understand that, okay, if I fix this, then I've got to go back, create a new group, and then swap all the old groups out for the new one and then purge that old group out if possible. So there's just a ton of nuances to groups that you have to get into and understand. It's also why most of my families, with the exception of like doors, like my casework families, things like that, I don't have wall hosted families. I don't have, hosted families. Most families are unhosted because if you start getting into groups, yeah, my toilet accessories don't move off of the wall if the wall moves, but if they're in a group, then they don't blow up. So you've just got to start to understand a lot of those things when you get into them and understand how to manipulate those to minimize it. But no, you're never going to get away from the non-fixed groups issue.
That was quick, but sad.
Unfortunately.
All right. Rick is asking, is there a way to tag windows on elevation views other than plans?
Yes, use the tag command.
Yeah, I'm a little unclear on that one.
Yeah, Rick, I think we're needing to follow up because you can tag in elevations just as you can in plan.
If we actually started at my last job with kind of crazy facades doing a locked 3D view. So we had, 3 or 4 views and we were tagging them in 3D. But I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, so if you've got a locked, then you can also tag in 3D as well.
Just don't model windows. only need rough openings. Who cares?
So yeah, you can follow up on that one, Rick. Cool. Otherwise, let's jump to the next one.
All right.
You may have
Did
lost
20
him.
Did 2022 open?
Yep.
All right. So this is a curtain wall question. So in 2022, they can't seem to make a curtain wall with an arched top. Even when we apply a panel with the exact same dimensions and curve, it won't work. So it's possible in previous versions. Any thought or solutions?
Well, any non-rectangular panel has to be an system panel. You can't make a curtain wall. You can't make a curtain wall or a custom panel that's non-rectangular. It just Revit doesn't let you do it. So even if I were to come in here and edit this profile, draw an arc. I did exactly what I tell everybody not to do. Always cut away from the wall. Don't ever add to. You should be able to do it. But again, you will not be able to have panels that are non-system panels. Custom panels have to be rectangular in shape. And not even parallelograms, they have to be rectangular in shape. Once they become non-rectangular, they can no longer be system panels. So I don't yeah, I don't know the question on that one because I just did it. It just it has to be system panels, not custom.
All right, so I guess we need a follow up. Oh, and Rick says plan a symbol but size on elevations.
Oh, so he's got some sort of tag that has a fake dimension built into it, is what I'm assuming. So you can like, oh, this looks like a dimension string and there's a symbol in it in plan. Symbols only show up in plan views. So when you're looking at your window, no, you can't get it to work in an elevation view. Symbols only show up for most family types. Certain family types, when you start looking at them, well, I start with a crappy template. I'm trying to think which ones those might be. It's an electrical family. So if I go file, new family. Come on, where's my MEP people? I know you know what I'm talking about when you do a template. Oh, did I do new family? Yeah, template. I did the wrong thing. Sorry, file, new family, English Imperial. It's gonna grab. I think it's electrical fixture. Some of the MEP families have the capability to say maintain annotation orientation, which will sometimes allow that orientation to be showed up in other views. But again, it's only specific families. I actually just think that might even be the way it displays. I can't remember. But yeah, it's a known thing with Revit that nested annotations in a family only show up in plan view. So no, if you've got some sort of tag where you're like, oh, I'm showing the width of this thing, you're only going to be able to show that in plan. You will not be able to show that in an elevation.
You could just tag it separately in elevation, right? With
Somebody
not all
said,
at
can you create a
once.
non-rectangular family with massing? Yeah, if you came in here and I don't know, for me, open up. When I want non-rectangular families, you can technically use an adaptive component, which I know somebody had emailed me a question that I just remembered prior to this. So I apologize for not getting that pre-emailed question if you're the person on here asking about it. But Revit families. What version of Revit am I in currently? This is 22. Sure, I have it 22 as well. Curtain panels. I have a sample family project. Oh crap, it's probably not updated in this one if I've got to upgrade it. The one thing I'll do is I have actually adaptive component families that look like a curtain panel, and I can actually pick on the corners of the other panels or the mullions or whatever you're going to be picking on, or the grid lines even, and get those to start adjusting. So I have an example, and I don't think it's going to be in this file, where all these non-rectangular panels at the top actually are adaptive components. In this case, I've just used a system panel, and what you're looking at down here is the panel down here has those cables into it, and I just extended them up. So something like this is all part of my panel family, but I just use a system panel at the top. I do have a version in a later release of Revit where, hey, I've now nested in adaptive components in here, but it is a pain because placing adaptive components are not simple. It's a click, 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 click. It's not like I can say automate that. But as the grid spacing changes, as the other things change, those adaptive components will adjust with it. But no, I mean, that's really it. There is a way to do a mass family, and then you apply a mass inside of there. You do curtain system by face of that mass, but then your one panel is a curtain system panel, and it becomes a little bit more crazy. But again, you have to then get into a curtain panel by pattern family if you want it to be completely custom and weird. That's going to be something you're looking at. So unless there's something like that, hey, I don't really know. It should work, but again, system families. Cool. So what's the next one? Minus 22.
Oh, is there a way to cut voids in nested families?
I was unclear if that meant cutting the nested family or nested family cutting something in the project. Maybe.
So I think what it means is when you nest a family into a family, can you cut into that nested family? I believe certain categories you can, but not the majority of them. I think in 23 and 24, because you can join generic model families that are nested within each other, or even casework families that are nested. I don't know if you can actually cut a void out of those though, now that they've started adding the joining tools. I can't think off the top of my head on that one. Trying to think. So if I go open,
Maybe an example would be good.
that's what I was trying to do. I was just gonna go open one of my trying to see if I have a generic model family that's got nested families in it. Well, this is all generic model nested in. Let's look. So let me make sure that's a sweep, that's a sweep, that's a generic model. So let's see, can we do a void that will cut that generic family? So create, extrusion, rectangle. Where am I working? Cool, finish. Pull it up there, pull it over here. Am I touching it? Hell, I'm not even close. Pull it way over here, way up here, and way over here. Cool. Switch this to be a void. Now can I use the cut tool? Oh no, because I can't even select it. Yeah, so no way to cut. So I know with generic model families now, you can actually use the join tool on them. So when you go to join, that might be, yes, I can like join it to other nested families. As long as it's generic model, casework, the ones that can also be joined within the project environment. But I guess no, you can't cut a void out of that.
I wouldn't expect you to be able to. Because that family would have to edit itself and it doesn't know.
Yeah, well, but when you're joining them, like if I took this and made a copy of it like that, I can come in and use the join tool, and basically you're saying, hey, cut a void out of one of those.
Oh.
So I guess you could do that.
A workaround?
You just need to nest a void
Nest the
family.
void in, and then use the void to cut it. Or the other thing is the void could be face-based. You can put on it. And I know I've done this with structural framing, or no, was it structural connection? Structural connections are other ones because holes can cut them, but you can nest voids in that are face-based and they will cut them. So that's another option. But just to have an extrusion in here, what if I made this an extrusion? Let's go back to make that a solid. Then can I use the join tool and join this to this? No, it's got to be nested.
So interesting. You would think the nested would be more problematic than the native one.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have
So I
one
know you
minute
can.
and 2 questions.
So hopefully, Ryan, that answers your question on no, but you could nest in a void family or nest in it. You can nest in a solid family that's just not visible to.
Hmm.
And let's use the join in the right order. And then make that one not visible.
True.
But again, you can't join. It's like even here, I can't join this generic model to this extrusion. That's just a sweep, even though they're both technically generic models. All right.
So
One more
missed all the
question.
things. All right. Well, this one, Ben's might not be super quick because
Well,
it
the answer is
says,
quick, but the demonstration takes an hour.
that's true. Okay, so it says, I've heard of a model alignment issue from a sub. What is the workflow to be able to make sure everything is lined up correctly, or acquiring coordinates with multiple models from multiple disciplines to be able to produce a composite NWD file?
The simple answer to that is whoever the lead is should be controlling the coordinate system, and every other person working within that should link that model in and acquire coordinates. That's the simple file. Even if you all have different 0, 0, but for all of them to be using the same coordinate system, every single person other than the prime should be acquiring coordinates from that prime model. Once that's done, then when you export to NWC, it'll look at those coordinates and it'll say, hey, we're going to line them all up via shared coordinates.
Or a
That's the
site
simple
file
answer.
would do it too, right? Even if
What was that?
a site file would do it
Site
too. Right?
Yeah, so if you link all of them into a site file, but the problem is, most people are on BIM 360 or different models, so you can't, you'd have to link them all in, set up grids for the thing, and then everybody'd have to acquire from the site file. So regardless of what it is, they should be getting acquired from one file. The other thing that I require all people to do in my projects is I have a little family called my survey marker. And it's a little round family that I put in my project. And I find 3 survey points, who again, ever the lead is, puts those 3 in. I put them in at the correct elevation. I put them in the correct center lines of those points in there. I make everybody tab select, copy to clipboard, paste same place. Tab select, copy to clipboard, paste same place. So in the event we export out and something horribly goes wrong, because half the people unclick their project base point, they did other bizarre, weird things. At least we have those 3 places to align those things in Navisworks. I personally, as the lead, usually talk to my contractor saying, hey, what 3 points do you want me to use? They tell me, I put those in at the correct elevation, again, correct location. And honest truth, when I first put them in, I have a diameter of like 50 feet or something stupid on them so everybody can see them. That's parametric. After they copy and paste, I say, cool, now go make that diameter like 2 inches. So it's not this giant thing floating in your project. But I do want them to be giant as I start that project. So that's kind of one of the things that I like to do and go through and get set up.
Yeah, and then the long answer is there will be a lot of babysitting through the entire project. Lots of hand holding.
Is Chris? I gotta go into. I was gonna say, is Chris on here?
Which Chris? There's like 50.
Chris M.
Chris.
Yeah, I'm getting there. He is on here. See, he's the one who emailed me the question. So Chris had actually asked me a question of like, what are some great uses for adaptive components? Am I in Revit 23? I am. I use adaptive components. Actually, I already have one of the files open. I use adaptive components quite often. I've taught sessions called Everyday Uses of Adaptive Components. I use them, like I said earlier, I've got that curtain wall file where I've used them. I've modeled entire building facades and skins using adaptive components. I really like adaptive components. But one of those things, so this handrail that you see over here that I have, the glass, there's no hole in the glass. There's no void here, right? The little baluster that I'm using or my support is a solid piece. I call it gasketing material and it's rubber, so it'll render with something there. But if you truly wanted a void here and you tried doing this with Revit and Revit panels,
am I the only one still seeing the ladder?
Oh, shit. Did I accidentally bump? Oh, crap. I bumped the pause. Sorry, my bad. When I was
Okay.
trying to find the attendees, I bumped the pause share. So when I come in here and do this, there's no void in here, right? I'm moving a solid extrusion around. But if you truly wanted to model that, and I come in here and look, this panel is an adaptive component. I've got a 6-point adaptive component for the base. All the other ones are just 4 points in the middle. And what's great is I can still use those same supports that I had if I tab select. Come on. Why am I not? Pressing button 4 clips. So I have one in here for called stair, and literally what it is I can toggle off my little gasket material. The reason I toggle this off is when that gasket material is there, I'm actually using that little extrusion to snap this adaptive component to. So I'm using that gasket material over there to snap this adaptive component to. Once I snap that adaptive component to it, I go ahead and turn that off in the properties. But then the cool part is with an adaptive component, I got to find that. It's too many things to tab through. Panel rectangle, there we go. What's great is since it's an adaptive component, I can now move this. I'm moving the entire handrail. Grab the wrong thing. You tab the clip. There we go. I can move this, and as I move this, that adaptive component is going to be going along for the ride. So we can come through and set this up. I've used this for my structural engineers to start doing my tapered sloping footing, where I'm going from one height to another, and I've got that diagonal taper. I'll use that taper slope footing. It's an adaptive component, so if my foundations adjust or they move or anything else, I don't have to constantly remember about moving that little thing when you get into it. I use them all of the time. If you've ever been to San Francisco and seen the air traffic control tower, that was done back in Revit 2011 when we first got adaptive components. And that entire skin facade was modeled with Revit adaptive components. So there's a lot of different tools that I use for it, and they work great. You just have to understand the nuances. One of the most recent ones I used, I had a client like, cool, I've got this handrail, which was actually elliptical shape. And I wanted to go from this size ellipse, which I have to have by code, and it flared out and came around and did this weird thing. And they're like, cool. So I did an adaptive component where I hosted it to this, and I hosted it to the ground. And then adaptive components can also have what are called shape handle points. And then the user could grab that shape handle point and just start stretching it on the project to get the feel of what he wanted for that flow of that handrail. So flowed in right off of the existing handrail that was there. Then we kind of went in, and it was just the sweep that I was controlling with adaptive component points, etc. So I love adaptive components. There's a lot of nuances to them. Like if certain things change, they just get deleted, and you're kind of like, there's no warning. Like if I were to delete, that support, both of the things hosted on that support go bye-bye. And there's no warning that they're going bye-bye. There's nothing in Revit that tells you they're going bye-bye. They just, they're gone. They just lose. And there's a lot of issues for that. One of the families I use quite often is a clevis and rod for all my structural things. Architects use all the time. Oh, I got to draw this back to there. That's just an adaptive component. I pick here, I pick there. I tell it the size of clevis I want, the size of rod I want, and now that's going to update with everything. So there's a ton of issues, tons of things you can do. One of the ones I like the most, and I am going to go in and let's just say we wanted to, let's just draw a short wall here. All right, we've got a wall here, and then we're going to take another wall over here. Let's say we're going to be doing some sort of weird soffit. And let's just go say this is going to be 8 feet up. And this one's just going to be unconnected at 8 feet. Right, so I probably should make this one 9 feet. So you wanted this one to be like, oh, I need to do a slope soffit here, right? I've got the vertical face of the soffit I got here, but I need to figure out a slope from there to there. One of the easiest things to do for an adaptive component is create this. And what a lot of people don't know is wall by face can host 2 generic models. So if I come in here and do new, it'll probably be faster to create this new family and try to find where I might have a simplified version of this. Go to the English Imperial. I'm going to grab curtain panel by pattern.
You got Ben all excited about the adaptive component foundation.
What is it? Generic model, pattern based. Okay, this is going to be the simplest family you're ever going to create. I'm going to take these reference lines. I'm going to say create form. I'm going to tell it I want a surface, not a solid. I'm going to grab that and give myself the capability to toggle it. Surface. So I got to create the new button first. Surface. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to load this into my project. Easiest family you've ever created in your life. I was doing that in my sample railings. So what's great about this family now is I'm going to go back to my 3D view. I'm going to go place this component, is I'm going to literally grab that end, this end, this end, and this end. All right, so I've got my generic model there. Because now I can go in here and say, cool, let me go to architecture, let me do wall by face. Let me choose that face. I've now put a wall there. Should have probably drew it the other direction. So they are directional, so I should have placed it in the other way, but we're running out of time, or we're out of time. I can move this, and that adaptive component updates with it, right? I can change the length. Then I can just grab that adaptive component and say related hosts, update to face, I have now updated that sloping soffit. Oh, what am I thinking? This should have been at 10 feet. As I change this, I can start going through again, either grab that, say update to face, and now I've updated that. So 4-point adaptive family, that quick to create, could be 6-point, could be whatever you need to do, and then say wall to face, roof by face. You've now got that going through, and you've now created your slope soffit. And I still do this in lieu of the sloping walls because it's a hell of a lot easier to figure out this than it is to try to go do a sloping wall that you've got to try to then figure out the angle, etc. when you're doing it. So tons of uses. You just got to start thinking of, hey, these can host the objects within a project. On my roof cricket family, I've done a roof cricket family for 15 years now using adaptive components. And it adjusts if the roofs adjust as well. So, and now we're 10 minutes over.
And Michael still wanted to have angry hot takes on AI. Go.
Angry hot takes on AI. Hey, I know what you're talking about, man. I love AI because I just got the new Windows update for my Copilot, which gives me AI at my fingertips with Windows 11 and Bing Chat. This is so cool. Let's see, Revit, adaptive component, how to. Cool. So we've got that right there at our fingertips. I don't even need to do Revit radio anymore. We're just going to use this AI personal assistant. What is it called? I don't even remember. It came up yesterday when I installed it. My Copilot. See, there you go. Why do you guys even need me? You've now got Copilot to replace Revit radio.
Basically, to do the Google search for you.
Exactly.
I was literally like, or just Google Brian Mackey adaptive components, and like a gazillion blogs and conference papers will probably come up.
Yeah, mine don't even come up in here. I've actually literally even put my AU family in title in here, and it doesn't even come up.
We had it was a while back where we had a bunch of people over for dinner, and we had a contest of if ChatGPT knew who you were. If we had enough internet presence for ChatGPT to know us. Where do you find time in a workday to make all these very cool families? Decades, Rick. Decades and decades.
Part of it is I start creating it for a client, and then I just go over the top. So if you really want to see an adaptive component family, this is me. This is my simple 4-point panel family. That's the split version. That's my tapered version. Yeah. So this is my 4-point adaptive component family. You will see that there is not a single dimension that controls anything. These are all just reporting parameters. But if I were to select this rectangular adaptive component family and look, I have 38 reference points, 12 reference lines inside of here, just for my 4-point adaptive component family. But the nice part about this is I can move it any way I want. Move it up, down, it'll start to warp, it'll tell me the deformation. I can extend it past where I clicked on the project, so I can make it go past or short, inside or out at any one of those corners. So again, this was me starting with that 4-point adaptive component family to put a wall by face, and then just going and going and going and going farther and farther and farther until it's become something that's just insanely crazy. But the parameters actually don't look that bad. When you look at it like, hey, this is not that bad. It's literally not. Yeah, Desiree did an entire bridge a few jobs ago, 100% done out of adaptive components.
And there was that arena roof, and
Yeah.
remember the double T that was sagging with the water? That was adaptive components. I was trying to think.
Well, no, the water was an adaptive
stuff.
component that I couldn't just let you draw filled regions in.
That, yes, I know, but there was other things in there. It's bad when you're Googling yourself to remember what you've done.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with one of mine.
Can't do that in public.
You know, the best is when Brian Googles something because he can't remember, and his own blog comes up, and he's like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, so here's some adaptive components. Here's Desiree's adaptive water volume because she was gonna draw in filled regions here, and I'm like, no, because as these warp and curve and do whatever we need to do, we need to have this all update. So we did that one too.
Yeah, that was unnecessary. It was for
That was 100% me
it
geeking
was an
out.
expert witness job where it just needed to be pretty in blue. It wasn't ever going to change.
Is that this one I'm thinking of? Yeah, this was way old, back when Vasari gave us sliders before we had the massing environment. But this was me doing a space frame and then just having some fun with Vasari.
Moment of silence for Vasari.
Moment of silence. God, when did I post this?
That's a long time ago.
Ask AI.
I was trying to see when it was posted. It doesn't.
I think that's when it first like came out and we were just messing around.
2012.
Wow.
I say, and 2012 is when we got the repeaters. Prior to that, it was no
Yeah.
repeaters.
You're old, man.
I would open this model for you all, but I probably can't due to
You were so far over time. People are like,
whatever. If they're still here, cool. So this was 100%. That model was done in Revit, 100%, all adaptive components for the entire skin. Oh, there's a YouTube video on it? See, I didn't know there's a YouTube video on it. But yeah, so if you want to, that was I think that was done in Revit 2010 or 11, before we had repeaters, and the person doing it literally had to go in and click all the points, and the points were like 28 point panels, so we had to click 28 times for each panel. If you misclicked on one of them, you're like, damn it. But cool. So we are over by we're quarter past the hour, only 15 minutes over. I will now close this down before you guys get me talking and geeking out about anything else adaptive component related or global parameters, because I love them both. I thank everybody for showing up. I thank Melissa for waking up at the wee hours of tomorrow. And
Scott wants you to do a live Revit radio from AU next month.
I would do that if he gets it all set up and gives me decent internet.
Yeah, he's not going, so maybe you have to.
Yeah, but he wanted it from the sphere. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a much different thing.
That's a much different thing. But
You could,
otherwise,
like-
I'm glad everybody showed up. And yes, we will be having one more Revit Radio before AU next month. And so hopefully we'll see you all then. And if not, then I hope to see you in person at AU, and tell your coworkers, family, friends, enemies, people who need to kill billable time, your competition, whoever. We just do this to better the whole industry. So if you know anybody else who wants to join, please pass it along, because it's not like we actually market this or anything. So thanks everyone, and see you next month.